Up to Colossians chapter 4. Colossians chapter 4. And if you have one of these little books, it is page 150. 150. I need a helper. Where is Jeremy close? I know, bro. My notes just disappeared. Are those them right there? This is really common. Yes, save the day. Thanks, Jeremy. Woo-hoo. All right. Vision leaks. If you are driving down the road and you let go of your steering wheel, it naturally won't stay in the lane, right? It just on its own naturally spins into chaos. And so once in a while, we need to set aside some Sundays, which is what we're doing this week and next week, to revisit who we as a community are supposed to be, who we as connections are supposed to be. So I want to share some things with you today that I know that we're talking about the ecclesia, which we haven't talked about in 2.5 years. I was talking to somebody this morning. It's been 2.5 years since we visited this, and it's a big deal for us, and so we're going to spend some time talking about it. But I want to start in Colossians chapter 4. Again, if you have your little Bible here, I'd love for you to follow along. And we'll start in verse 2 there, and let me set this up for you. Paul is writing to the church of Colossae, and he's giving them some wisdom on how to live, and he's also talking about what he needs prayer for. So it's kind of a give and take. Here's what you guys need to work on. Here's what I need from you. And understand that this is a new church, because every church at this point in time would have been brand new. So he has kind of given them some foundational rules to live by. He starts out, he says, devote yourselves to prayer. Make that a major priority. Being watchful or aware of what's going on. It doesn't seem to have any negative or positive connotations. It's just saying be aware and thankful. So he starts out with an address to them saying, listen, just be thankful for what God has given you. Be aware of what's out there, good or bad. Okay? And then he says this. He says, and pray for us too, that God may proclaim the mysteries of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I proclaim it as clearly as I should. Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity, and may your conversation always be full of grace and seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Now, I want to walk us through this because I believe this is a foundational message for connections. This is who we are supposed to be, and who we strive to be, what we're hungry for on a weekly basis. So Paul starts and he says, pray for us that we can proclaim the mysteries of Christ for which I am in chains. So Paul has been put in these chains specifically for sharing the gospel. He's frustrated now because it says chains, it uses that word. So he's literally in chains. He can't spread the gospel, which is what his heart's call is. It's the song in his soul that he can't get out. It's what he's supposed to be doing. Now he's stuck in chains, and he's saying, pray that I can proclaim this message to somebody, to someone, that somebody would hear this message. You almost hear like a frustration in the voice of Paul saying, pray for us, would you, that I can proclaim this mystery of Christ. Then he says this, be wise in how you treat outsiders. Now, the church of that day was significantly different than the church of today. The church in that day was a handful of people who have decided to follow Jesus. They all get together and they begin to have these worship moments. They seek God together. And it's literally like almost a secret society. Not a secret society in a bad way. It's just that their lives were on the line for being a church. You could be killed for being a church. And so 8 or 10 of us get together. I have to trust you with my life, because if you go to the authorities and tell them that I have decided to follow Jesus, they will come take me out of my house. And so the 10 of us know each other so incredibly well that we trust each other with our very lives. And so now Paul is saying, be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. And so there's a bit of a caution here. Be careful for people that aren't in the church on how you view them and how you talk to them. But then he says this, be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Always be full of grace and seasoned with salt. This is the underlining principles for the way that we treat connections. It's on our video every single Sunday morning before service starts. We run this. Laura mentioned it today, standing right here. These are the 2 rules we live by. It comes from this passage where Paul is talking to this little church. And he says, be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. May your conversation be full of grace, meaning loving, not judging people for what they drive or dress or whatever, or their economic status, or just be grace-filled. Love them for who they are and where they are. And may your conversation be seasoned with salt, meaning encouraging one another, being positive to each other. That is the community that we want here. When we come through the doors, or better yet, when you bring a friend of yours through these doors, we want them to come in and just feel great. We want to encourage them and love them and lift them up, and not in a fake way. We're not like, oh, glad you're here, but we don't mean it. We are happy that they've come to hang out with us. And we're not going to judge them. We're just going to love them where they are. Probably of all the stories that I get to tell, one of my favorites that I've probably told 5 times from this stage is a friend of mine, Dave, who had pretty much given up on church. The last time that he had walked through a traditional church before he ended up at Connections, he walked in, he had a hat on and jeans. It was a big deal for him to finally accept the invite from his wife to go to church. This was the moment that he said, okay, honey, I'll go with you one time. We all know the story. The names change, but the stories stay the same, right? You've heard this story where the wife is begging her husband to go. And finally he walks through the door. He comes in his jeans and his hat. This wasn't at Connections. And he's in the lobby, and a gentleman takes his hat off his head without asking and puts it in his chest and just tells him, we don't wear hats in the Lord's house. Now, if you're the wife who's been begging your husband to come, and that happens, what would you do? Would you not just take the usher down? Would you not tackle him right there in the lobby and just beat him? I would be so incredibly blown away. If that ever happened at Connections, I have no idea what would we do. We want to be the exact opposite of that. That if you come in shorts and a tank top, you are welcome here. And if you reek like smoke or alcohol or whatever, you're welcome here. And if you prefer to wear a 3-piece suit and that's how you feel comfortable because that's an attitude of praise for you, please do that. We're not going to judge you for dressing up either. I've had to call a couple of us on the carpet for chiding people who are dressed up as if it's a bad thing. However you come through the door, we're a grace-filled church, and we want to love you just the way that you are. This is us. This will always be us. This will never change. We'll never become a liturgical church. We'll never become a judgmental church. As long as I get to make sure the car is heading in the right lane, we will always be full of grace and seasoned with salt. And Paul says, if you do those 2 things, you will know how to answer everyone. Everyone. These 2 things hit everyone. Now, I want us to, if you have your notes there, I would love for you to take some notes with me. I want to talk about the ecclesia. This is probably the biggest difference between Connections and a handful of other churches. Before I dive into how great Connections is, because I'm passionate about it, let me make this disclaimer. We love all churches. Are you hearing me? We love them all. There are churches that are discipleship churches. They're not about saving people. They're about growing people deeper. We love them. They're a part of the body. It's not our calling. It's their calling. But if we were all like connections, we wouldn't have the deeper rooted Christians that we need to carry on the traditions of Christianity. We believe in what they're doing. Some churches are liturgical. We used to rent from a place down the street, and every week when you came in, because we visited them on Sunday mornings just to be friends, and they would hand you a bulletin. And in that bulletin, I kid you not, was every word that was going to be said from the pulpit, maybe with a couple of little comments here and there, but I bet you 96 to 97% of every word that was said was in that bulletin. Every song you're going to sing, this is what the pastor, and it was as liturgical as it gets. But we love them because that's going to hit some people that we're not hitting. So hear my heart on this. We don't think we're better than anyone else. We are all equals. We just have different parts of the body, and we're all doing different things. Having said that, here we go. The Bible uses this word for gatherings, and most of the time it's talking about Christian gatherings. And the word is ecclesia. If you would take the time to write that down, put it at the top of your page there. I already put an E to get you started. The ecclesia. The ecclesia can mean one of three things. Two of them for sure. The third one is kind of debated amongst Christians. The first one is it's the global body of believers. This word ecclesia is used over 100 times in the Bible. We see it often. When we're talking about the global body of believers, we're talking about Revelations 21, 22 in that area where it's talking about the end of times and every tongue, tribe, and language is getting together, and we have this concept of the global church, everyone who belongs to the global ecclesia. Number two is a specific body of believers. This comes from, you can take the chapter 2 of Revelation where you got some of the 7 churches where it says to the church of Pergamum or to the church of Thyatira, and it's a word, or to the church of Colossae like we're reading in Colossians. It's like a specific word for a specific body of believers. The third one is, again, a little controversial, but it's not a big deal. It's that it is a place of worship. Stop that. For believers. So, ecclesia equals church, and this is what a church can mean. It can be a global body of believers, it can mean a specific body of believers, and maybe it means a place of worship for believers. Now, looking at that, what do all three of those have in common? Believers, right? That the ecclesia is really about believers. And now, to reiterate something that I said earlier, at that time, the ecclesia, the church as we know it, was a very tight-knit, sort of scared group of people that trusted each other with their lives. You would not let an outsider in who did not profess Christ because they could turn you in and you might be killed. And so it was about the body of believers. What you see across America on a Sunday morning in this little church pastor's opinion is not ecclesia, because these churches are trying to get non-believers to come through the door. This is a good thing. I think they should try to get them to come through the door. But as soon as you open the door to all the different types of people, it's no longer this concentrated ecclesia. Now it's kind of a mixed bag of everything. This causes problems. Because when we study God's word on what the regulations and rules are for the ecclesia, it's very specific. Look at, in fact, you're in Colossians. Just jump back a page to Colossians 3. It's called the Rules for Holy Living. I'll drop my book here. These are rules for you and me, for those of us who know Christ. Start in verse, say, 5. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways, obviously talking to Christians. You used to be this way, but now you must rid yourself of anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off the old self, etc., etc., etc. Then look down at verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Now, when he writes this to the church of Colossae, he's writing to Christians. These are rules that you're supposed to live by. If you don't live by these rules, there are consequences. Write down this reference, 1 Corinthians 5:5. You can look it up later, but it's an example of Paul judging somebody within the close-knit group of few Christians that we had because they are living in immorality, and he literally kicks them out of the church. When's the last time you had somebody kicked out of the church? It's not totally rare, but it's pretty rare. And so here's Paul saying, turn this man over to the world so that he can see how screwed up he is, and maybe he'll come back and ask for forgiveness. Or you look at, this is Matthew 18:15, just listen. If your brother sins, go and show him his fault in private. This is talking about the ecclesia. This is amongst brothers. If your brother sins, go and show him his fault. If he listens to you, you won. Great, done deal. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two more with you, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be confirmed. If he refuses to listen to them, then tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen to the church, then let him be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. In other words, you're still going to, remember how Jesus treated tax collectors. So he was gentle with them. But at that point, they're no longer part of the ecclesia. Now, I have a bunch more of these verses, of all these rules on what it takes to be part of the ecclesia. So now we have a problem. This is the major problem. This is the major, in my opinion, in all the churches I grew up in and the ones I've worked for, this is the biggest problem that churches have. We are treating ourselves like an ecclesia. We are trying to follow the rules of the ecclesia. We are trying to be an Acts ecclesia where we all share everything and do everything together, and it's one body. And so we've put on this mindset that we believe in this, but then we've invited people who are not Christians into our ecclesia, and now we're confused on what to do. Joe, who grew up in the church, whose parents are on the board, plays drums at the church. I'm just making this up. Please don't read into it. Plays drums at the church, started living with his girlfriend. Joe knows better than that because Joe grew up in the church. And so what we're going to do with Joe is we're going to have a talking to him. We're going to kick him off the stage. We may kick him out of the church if he doesn't make some choices. But then Jim comes in, and Jim doesn't know Jesus, and we're hoping he finds Jesus. Oh, you know what? He plays the drums. So we're going to put him back on the drum kit, but he's stumbling out of the bar every other night, but we're just happy he's here because he's going to hear about Jesus. And now Joe's ticked off because he was kicked off for doing something that Jim's applauded for, and it's confusing, and it just becomes a political nightmare on how you're supposed to handle that because it's part ecclesia and part not ecclesia, so you can no longer hold them accountable to the rules of the ecclesia. So from the beginning, we have said we will not be an ecclesia. We are not a church. Connections is not a church. We will never be a proper church as I believe that is defined clearly in God's word. That is not us. That is not who we want to be. We want to be a place where everybody can come in and join connections. And if you're here and you're visiting with us today, we don't want you to feel like our guest. We eventually want you to feel like family. And there is a difference. Every church I've grown up in has been great at treating outsiders as guests. Here's a coffee mug, and here's a DVD about us, and we love you, and can we buy you lunch, and here's the ministries that we have, and it's good, and we hug you, and we love on you. But you're really not allowed to be part of us. You can't serve with us. You definitely can't vote on anything. I mean, you are our guest, but there are restrictions. There's a line right here that you're not allowed to cross. And we had this idea of, what if we got rid of that line, and we just said, you know what, everyone's welcome. Whether you're a fisherman or a tax collector, whether you're going to deny us one day or turn us in and commit suicide, whatever it is, those stories of the disciples, whatever it is, you are welcome to be part of Connections. Now, within Connections, there is an ecclesia. Within the confines of this community, there is an ecclesia. So when I meet with my small group, most of them I know well enough to know where they are with Jesus, and we hold each other accountable. And we talk about these rules of holy living, and we discuss the deeper things, and there is accountability and love and encouragement, and it's very much an ecclesia circle. But what happens globally for Connections, what happens in this room, is not ecclesia. So we ask this question: what would it look like if we allowed people who are either new to the Christian faith or not even Christians yet to be part of us, to help make decisions, to serve God even if they don't know him? This is a challenge for some of our theologies. We're struggling right now. I know some of you are. This beats wrong in your heart. Whenever Jeremy moved to Thailand and he wanted to start a church, not everybody in Thailand's a Christian. In fact, nobody in Thailand's a Christian. So what's Jeremy supposed to do? Is he supposed to run children's ministry and then lead worship and then preach and do everything himself? Well, of course not. It's commonplace for a missionary to gather people around and give them tasks to do to glorify God even though they don't know who he is. We go, is that possible? Is that possible here? Now, we've decided there's a couple of restrictions. If you don't know Jesus, you're not going to preach. That's a pretty good rule, right? You can't really preach God's word if you don't know him. We understand that there are a few limitations, but understand this, that by and large, 9 out of 10 doors are wide open, and you're welcome to come in and be part of us and help us do ministry, help us love people, no matter where you are in your Christian faith. The results of doing this are messy. They're just messy. Because we have people that come in, and instead of keeping our little barrier up, our little force field of holiness, we don't want anybody to come in our little force field of holiness, and instead of keeping that up, we have let that down and say, please come in and commune with us. Please come in and be part of us. And some of these people that we allow in are messy. They cause problems. And they're dealing with bigger issues than we want to take on. And they say things that they shouldn't say. And they hurt people and whatever. But still, we allow them to be here and we love on them. And sometimes they come in and stick and find Jesus. Sometimes they come in and they get frustrated and they leave. All sorts of, in our 4 years of ministry, all sorts of things have happened. But we're okay with the mess. Hear me when I say this, because this comes from the bottom of my gut. I mean this with all my heart. I would rather deal with a non-Christian's sin than to deal with the Christian's piety, than to deal with the problems of those of us who grew up in the church who are backbiting and complaining and gossiping and dealing with all this junk. I'd rather deal with the sin. And I think Jesus did too. When you see Jesus meeting with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, those who called themselves godly men, he was strict with them. He held them to the rules of the ecclesia. He called them things that were odd back then, stiff-necked and double-minded, and he had all these terms that he used for them, and he held them accountable to a lot. But then he would meet these women who were struggling, and he would say, how are you doing? And he was like grace-filled and loving and merciful to these ladies. It was incredible. That's the heart of Connections. That we do have an ecclesia, and you need to hold me accountable, and I need to hold you accountable if we both know Jesus. But over here, as we have new people come in, it's going to be messy, and it's going to be gross. And you read how the disciples, who were just a ragtag group of men, you look at all the problems that they had. Do you think Jesus knew he was going to have these problems when he brought them on, when he said, come follow me? Sure he did. He knew Peter was going to deny him. He knew James and John wanted to sit next to him on the throne and would argue about it all the time. He knew the problems that these guys would have. Yet these are the men that he chose to have inside his holiness force field. More of us need to be more open to let others into our lives. Let me conclude this section by saying this. We're not going to treat others like guests. Once you've been here a couple of weeks, you're family. You have refrigerator rights. You can be part of us. You don't have to ask to get in our fridge. Open the door and take what you want. You're one of us. This last year, we did some great things. We have a few things that are in our DNA. We're going to talk about them next week. But one of those is we will never be a country club. We will never be a place where just those of us who know each other get together and do their thing. We will always be about going out, not looking in. And in 2012, we did some great stuff. And when you put it all together, I think it'll blow your mind. It does me, that this little church in the corner of Meridian is reaching and loving so many people. So I want to show you a video. It's kind of skewed for technical reasons. And I want to walk you through it because some of us are new here, and I just want to tell you what we're doing. This is all stuff that we did this last summer, theoretically. This was, a few of us went to a nursing home, and we weren't allowed to show a lot of pictures of the people actually in the nursing home, so that was us working. That was at the Christian Children's Ranch. We painted some walls from them. Andy, I don't remember why you cooked. I'm sure it was great. This is at the women's and kids shelter, or maybe the men's shelter. We went two different places. This is one day we just went out to this neighborhood behind us, and we cleaned up their playgrounds. We fixed a roof for a lady. We just did all sorts of random stuff that needed to be done. This is one of my favorites of the year. This is the free garage sale. All this stuff was donated from us, and there's Justin on a pony. And we gave all that away. Just they would get everything they wanted, and they'd bring it up. They'd say, how much for all this? And we'd say, it is free. Have a great day. God bless. And they'd all go, really? Free? Where's my donation go? We're like, no donations. That was Jessica and Mitch at the men's Boise Rescue Mission, I hear. Where were you guys, Jeff, on this one? City of Light. That was a small group. That small group went and did that completely on their own. So that was this summer. Also, a couple of weeks ago, we hung out at Fred Meyer's and we wrapped Christmas presents. So we did this 2-3 years ago, and I remember, I don't know if Selena will remember this, but I remember talking with the manager, and he was like, you want to do what? I was like, well, we just want to wrap presents for free. He's like, I guess that's okay. I was like, cool, man. We'll just set up a table, and we set up a date, and he was like, yeah, that's cool. So we did that, and then we did it last year again, and then this year, Selena called up and said, hey, we'd like to come do it, and they said, we have Thursday open. We have gift wrappers for every other day. So apparently I don't know if they're other churches or just other nonprofits, or maybe I have no idea, but it was tough to get in, I guess. But we started it. That was us. Anyway, this was a great time, man. We just line up, and I remember one lady specifically, she goes, I feel spoiled. That was her word. She goes, I feel spoiled, because she had like a cart full of stuff, and we wrapped them all up, and she walked out ready to put them underneath the tree. So just another random thing that we do that we love. One more video I'm going to show you here quickly. This is the Christian Children's Ranch. And let me set this up before you run it, Nathan. Last year and this year, we have just kind of adopted the Christian Children's Ranch. I wish we were in a place where we could do more for them, but as we grow, we will continue to send time and effort and resources their direction because we love what they're doing. And they have 5 houses with house parents, and they take in kids whose parents don't want them. The dad's in jail, mom is strung out, she knows this is better for her kids, and so these parents take in troubled kids up to 10, and they do their best to love on them and raise them, and it's an absolute challenge for them. And these kids, the same thing, are just kind of tossed in with these other kids, and it's everything you're thinking, that's what it is. So last year we approached them and said, can we buy, this is the original idea, can we buy presents for your kids? Because those house parents, they struggle financially, like we all would if we had 10 kids. And can we buy your kids presents? And this is what they said. They said, we have offers for other people to buy us presents. Would you be willing to take us out? They said, if you just take us to Burger King, we would love that. They will remember that all year long if you take them to Burger King. I'm like, we can definitely take them to Burger King. That is no problem at all. And so last year, we fed them here, and we went to a movie, and then we went to Pizza Hut, and we had a great time. This year, you can roll the video. This year, we fed him here. We went to a movie, and then we took him to Fuddruckers, and then we give him stockings at the end. This clip here of one of our kids from Connections handing a stocking that one of you filled to another little girl is just amazing. I mean, this to me is the heart of Connections. It's what we're about. It's what we do. Oh, that's pretty. Moving on. Don't know how to open that. A couple of the house parents there. A couple of the older kids. They go up to, there's really no age limit because they're completely privately funded, so they can keep them as long as the kids need it. Toothbrush, yes. That's Kevin, good dude. She's all stoked. Look at this. Sugar. The same little girl, she finally opened her package. Yes. Then she had a tiara on. She was so excited. That's one of the great things that we do, and I just absolutely love it. And we are sitting around that table. This is about 4 weeks ago. We're sitting around that table, and this one girl, she's probably 10 or 12, I don't know, she says, are we coming back next year here? And because they never eat out. They never eat out. And she goes, do we get to come back next year? And I said, I don't know, maybe. I said, we'll go somewhere. And she said, well, I hope we come back here because I'm going to order the ostrich burger. So she had prepared her order a year in advance for her next time she gets to eat out. I love what they do out at the Christian Children's Ranch. We are going to surprise them again here soon, and here's what I'd like us to do. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I want to say it because it fits right here. Their house parents are run ragged. They run the tight fence of trying to figure out finances and trying to raise all these kids. The day that we went out to help paint the house, there's a few skirmishes that happened amongst these kids. It's just the nature of the house, and these house parents are just tired. And even on this day, as the kids were opening presents, I couldn't help but feel for the heart of the house parents. Like, why didn't we buy them presents? And I just never even considered it. So around a couple of days before Valentine's Day, we're going to gather up a lot of us who are willing to help, and we're going to go out to the Children's Ranch, and we're going to babysit kids and hang out and run a movie or whatever it takes, and we're going to pay for dates for all the workers that work there. I just think it will be good. And I mentioned something like this to Jeff, one of their guys. I said, what does it look like for us to bless you? I said, how could we help you as house parents? And he said, the biggest thing is we love each other. Like the house parents really lean on each other. It's an ecclesia. Boy, is that ever an ecclesia amongst those house parents. But they don't get to spend any time together. He said, if we could just go out together and have fun one time, that would be incredible. So I'm like, that we can do that. It'll only cost us a few $100, and it will be something they will remember. So that's coming soon. We will always be an externally focused group of people. We will always be externally focused, trying to figure out what we can do with what we have. We put in the letter this week that we're going to make some big announcements today, firsts for Connections, and that's true. There's a couple of little things that I want to mention first. Finally, I have an office that's not at my house, and I know, we're clapping for an office, and we're excited about that. And a number of you volunteer at Connections, but you have to come over to the Taylor house, and basically you're in our living room, and thank you for putting up with that, and there's kids upstairs running, and it's a typical house. I mean, we're normal people. And it's so good to have a place now we can meet with volunteers, and you can come in, and if you're a mom and you want to come in and volunteer, we have nurseries, and we have places that your kids can run and play, and it's safe, and you can come in and help us do whatever suits you, whatever you want to do. That's a big deal. Secondly, For a while now, I have been working with Allegra. Allegra Finnegan is in the corner right over here. And she's been doing some work for Connections, and I have another company that I help run, and she's been doing some work for that too, and I've got to know her pretty well. And we just felt like she would be a great fit for Connections. So we approached her and said, would you be willing to work a couple of days a week in the office and help us get things done and organized and all that stuff? And she actually offered to work for free, and we insisted on paying her. But she is going to start working with us. Now, that's a big deal because I know we have amazing volunteers. I am in no way putting that down. But ultimately, it's either Tammy gets it done or I get it done. If something gets dropped, it's one of us that has to make it happen. And to have some more people that will help us carry the couch is amazing. You know, I can tell you story after story the last 3 years where things just don't get done because we just don't have the time to do it. And we know it, we see it, we want to get it done, we just can't get it done. And so Allegra is going to come in and start helping us organize and run things. And although she's starting just with office works, Allegra has a call to ministry, just like I have a call to ministry. And we believe in her long term. So even though right now she's going to be running some copies and doing that, she'll also be on stage singing and playing guitar, and maybe she'll be doing some speaking up here too. We just believe in her call and believe in her. And long term, we believe eventually she'll be a pastor with us. We believe in her that much, that she's great. And get to know her. Ladies, get to know her. One of the biggest challenges that we deal with at Connections is I have a philosophy, a policy, it's mine, that I don't meet with women for lunches unless it's my wife. It's the rule that I live by. I don't even ride in cars alone with women if they're not family. And so I have neglected some of our ladies, and I apologize. My wife has done an amazing job meeting with some of you women, but she's a mom, and she's got things that she's trying to do. And so now we have somebody else besides Tammy that's on staff that can help us do lunches and can pour into you and pray with you and listen to you. And that's starting right away. She'll start getting a hold of some of you and get to know her, let her get to know you. She's going to start doing ministry with us. Us making our first hire is a very, very big deal. I'm really, really excited about this. I can't even tell you how excited I am. Number 3, Jeremy and Lisa have been back on sabbatical, furlough, or whatever you call it, for a while now. And they've been in the States for a few months. And after a lot of fasting and prayer and figuring things out, they feel like God has given them permission to stay in the States, to return back here. And we're excited about that. We're super excited about that. So Jeremy and I have spent some time praying and talking about things, and we are going to bring him on staff too. This is going to be part-time. Allegra's part-time. Jeremy will be part-time. I'm sort of part-time too, honestly, financially. But we are excited about Jeremy being here. Now, I know a lot of you know Jeremy from the videos. We tried to keep things going. When he was in Thailand, we tried to keep him in front of you. What most of you wouldn't know is that Jeremy and Lisa moved up here from out of state when we launched Connections. So Jeremy's not just somebody who's coming in to jump on the wagon with us. He helped build the wagon. From the beginning, he was part of the process and the brainstorming and the ideas that we're not an ecclesia and those sort of things. He's been with us from the very beginning. And so for him to come in and instantly know what needs to be done and dive in is amazing. So this week I sat in my office with the 4 of us, me and Tammy and Allegra and Jeremy, and we put together a calendar. That is amazing. Like, we know what's coming up in a few weeks. Although our preaching schedule is always done in advance, everything else it gets done when it gets done. And this is completely true. We are filling out our calendar, and we're deciding Tuesdays would be the day that we meet together with the 4 of us to kind of do organizational stuff. And I put in my calendar, STAFF meeting, and I stared at it. I said, staff meeting. And then I got teary-eyed. I didn't cry, but I just welled up a little bit because I was like, we have a staff. What are we going to do? Since we have been working together for this last week, we fixed the opening video. You'll notice that the words actually match the person talking. We have put up signs out in the lobby that tell you where children's classrooms are and where the worship center is. We have things on your table there that tell you what's coming up. We have the big game party and some other stuff. We have announcements. I mean, it's like instantly we went from, oh, what are we doing, to here it is. What do we want to do next? And it's just exciting. I think you will see a number of significant changes right away. Even it's already happened, but even this week you will see more changes that are great, that are moving in the right direction. And not just physical, this is the building we meet in changes, but spiritual changes. We're going to start investing in our small groups more because we believe in those so much. Ladies, more of you, we can have lunches and meetings with you guys and hear your heart and pray with you. And so not only is there physical changes, but spiritual changes as well. Lastly, I want to talk about one more thing. I know we're over time, but I'm pretty passionate about this and it needs to be said. If you have your notes there in front of you, you see these random shapes. And I want to talk about those random shapes. Next week, we're going to continue this talk on our kind of the foundation of who Connections is. And we'll be talking about the 3 C's. On the back of this, you have the 3 C's. They're there every single week. These are the things: celebration, what happens on Sunday morning, community or small groups, and then calling. We're going to talk about these the whole time next week. This is part of our DNA. It's part of our foundation. They're there every week, although most of you probably never noticed. Also, just free of charge, this changes every week. Somebody made a comment to me this week that, oh, I thought that was just like your philosophies or whatever. No, these are actual up-to-date announcements that we somehow got out every week with just Tammy and I. But anyway, here they are. The third one down here is calling. And we're going to go deep into that next week, but I want to hit on it this week really quickly. We believe that everybody has a calling. No matter who you are, how smart you are, how old you are, how experienced or unexperienced you are, that you have something you can do to further God's kingdom. Now, specifically, I think a lot of that plays out in furthering Connections and helping carry the couch here at Connections. But it's more than that. It can be the way that you minister outside of Connections, whatever it is. We all have a calling. Every church that I've ever been a part of has done this when it comes to calling. You have 2 sides. You have, these are the people, this is us, and over here are the problems. So you see these shapes over here, and you see these holes over here. So here's the potential, the people, here are the problems. Most churches, and I've been completely guilty of this, most churches focus on the problems. These are the holes that need to be filled. So we have a square hole up here. The square hole equals we need somebody to work in the nursery. And so we are going to go find somebody to fill this hole. So we go over here, and if nobody fits that, we don't really care because we're not focused on the people, we're focused on the problem. The problem says we need somebody in that classroom. So we find the most naive person, and we were like, you're going to love this. It's the greatest thing. You change diapers, and it's amazing. You pray for these kids. And they're like, okay, good. And so they don't fit in this hole, but we take them and we shove them in there. This is what you need to do. And a week goes by, and 2 weeks goes by, and 3 weeks goes by, and then we do a follow-up. How's it going in there? It's all right. Well, listen, if you're getting burned out, let us know, and we'll start trying to find somebody to fill it. Okay, but they don't want to say anything because they feel bad about it, right? This is just how it's always worked, in my opinion. Now, the good part of that is this. All your holes are filled. It's great. Sunday morning, everything works because we have filled every hole, and nobody's happy. We're all miserable doing it, but every hole is filled, so everything gets taken care of. Instead, we decided, what if we focus on the people? And we go, what are you great at? And somebody says, you know what, I would love to be on the worship team. I can't sing, I can't play, but maybe I could run the presentation software, I could do something, because I really like that. Great, that is what you're great at. We are going to take you down, and we're going to put you in this hole, because this is where you fit. And when we do that, they love it. They're excited about it. They don't get burned out. They don't want to leave. They want to stay and do it as long as they can because they just love doing it. Now, the good news about that is the people who are being used are happy people. They love doing it. The bad news is there is a con to this program. There are some holes that are left empty. There are some things that need to be done that aren't getting done because we haven't found somebody who just loves doing it. We are okay with that. We are willing to deal with the occasional dropped ball in order to make sure that the people who are serving love what they do. There are a few exceptions of things that just have to get done. For example, the church has to be cleaned every week. Nobody wants to clean toilets. Nobody wants to sweep floors. Nobody wants to do that stuff, but it's got to get done. So you know who does that at Connections? Your leadership does that. Jim and Roberta, who run our oldest kids' classroom, their reward for loving on your kids every week and not coming to service and preparing during the week and putting a craft together, their reward for all that work is they get to clean toilets. And Andy and Selena, who are in the back left table, which we're going to monogram with their names because that's their table, they sit in the back left corner, and they oversee all our outreaches. Everything that you saw on the screen today, they helped make that happen. And their reward for all those phone calls and rejection calls and all that stuff they deal with is they get to clean the church. I feel good about saying that. Our leadership serves. We do the worst job on the list every week. I take my turn every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. We are in here cleaning. There are certain things on this list that just have to get done. But by and large, we want to find you, figure out what you're great at, and plug you in. When you go to the old system and you go, here's a triangle, and I know you don't fit in this square, but we're going to shove you in there anyway because we need this done. So we do that. But you know what happens? The square comes in the door. And they're excited about ministry. And they go, this is what I'm called to. But there's a triangle in my square. And so what do we do with them? We shove them in the octagon. And everybody's just a mess. We understand. I want you to be gracious to the staff and to our leadership. We understand some things are getting dropped. We know that. A few things are changing now that we've hired Jeremy and Allegra. We know a few things are getting dropped, but we are okay with that. We will continue to focus on the people, not focus on the problem. We have a number of holes that are empty right now that I want to tell you about. Our middle classroom doesn't have a leader. We have 6 individuals that rotate through, 5 or 6, that rotate through every week. But we don't have anyone who's setting the schedule. We have somebody who makes the curriculum, but we don't have anyone to make sure it's made. We don't have anybody running that. If that's something you're great at, we have a spot for you. It's just simply staying organized and staying on top of it and being here Sunday morning in case you get a I'm sick call, which happens once a month around here, that you can take over the class that you're in charge of. That's a big deal. We need help back in the booth. We have lights. They're amazing. They do all sorts of tricks. We turn them on and turn them off. We would love for somebody to come in and work with our tech team, and we can add people in that back area. There's lots of spaces to get involved. Here's what I'm asking. If you are not actively doing something at Connections, we want you in. In front of you, there's a card. It's about this big. It's called a connection card. Every week we talk about it. On the back side of that, there's a list of just random things that we have available, ways to serve at Connections. Would you look over that list and see if there's anything in there that just makes you happy, that you go, I would love to help out with this. And if you would just mark that off, throw it in the offering plate, or throw it in the offering plate. Where did that come from? What in the world? I'll tell you where that came from. It's because on that program there, it talks about we're doing an old school Sunday. And I typed out something about an offering plate, which we've never had, never will. Anyway, put it in the joy buckets that are out in the lobby, and we'll contact you this week and say, man, I heard you're passionate about this. We want to get you in the mix. What do you want to do? So we will do that right away if you will fill that out. Lastly, and I want to close with this. On the back of here, you see our giving. It's down here every week. It's an up-to-date of the month. Typically, our monthly expenditures, which include all the ministry we do, includes the building, it includes my salary, it includes everything that we do to make connections go. The need is typically around $6,000 to $6,500. In the month of December, we brought in, this says over $11,000. That's almost double what our need is, but that only is giving from people inside Connections. We had a few outside givers that did end of the year stuff, and we ended up with about $15,000 or $16,000 that came in the month of December. Now, yeah, that's amazing. That's praise God. Now, for a church that normally brings in about $5,500, that's literally almost 3 times what we're used to getting. Now, here's why I'm telling you this. We felt led that it was time to make some hires, and suddenly some money started coming in. We feel like this is God's provision for what he's called us to do. In other words, God called us to do it, we were faithful, and now he's providing the funds to make it happen. Most of this, now, and so, we can just literally take like $10,000 off the top and say, great, here we have an extra $10,000 that we can use to pay Allegra and Jeremy for the first 3 or 4 months of the year. That's amazing. That's a weight off my shoulder. I don't have to worry about making sure Jeremy's feeding his family. It's handled. Most of this giving was end-of-year giving or outsiders who just know me or whatever and say, man, we love what you're doing. We want to be helpful, and I'm always humbled and like, thank you so much for even knowing who we are. But it's going to take long-term more of us stepping up to the plate and helping out. Here's what I'm asking. If you love what we're doing, if you call Connections home, if you appreciate the ministry that's happening, we want you to be a part of that financially too. It is a need that we have. As more money comes in, we can do more things. We can do more ministry. I mentioned earlier all the random things that have happened. Because we had an influx of a few bucks, we now have a monitor in the nursery. I don't know who's working back there today, but we're talking about you right now. And so if you work in the nursery, you can see what's happening. It allows us to do more ministry at the Christian Children's Ranch. It allows us to do a lot of things. So if you love what we're doing, I'm encouraging you to take the risk, trust God, and try giving to him. This is what it should look like practically. I was talking with a good friend this week, and they made the comment that they always gave to God, but it was always kind of the leftovers. It's like I pay my bills and whatever, I see what's left, and I try to give God, 10% or whatever you feel like God's called you to give. We'll talk about giving next week. It'll blow your mind because we totally do things differently than most churches when it comes to giving. But, if you've decided that God's called you to give 8%, you kind of do that at the end after everything else has been paid for. And she made the comment to me, she said, I was at a conference and somebody mentioned that you should just do that first, and that was brand new news. And it is biblical for us to put God first, and I believe that means in our finances too. So I'm challenging a few more of us to step up to the plate when you get a paycheck to go, all right, God, this top 10% is yours. And whether it goes to Connections or it goes to your neighbor or it goes to the Christian Children's Ranch or it goes to a couple of missionaries we're about to support in Thailand, friends of Jeremy's that we believe in, that we're going to start sending his support money out that direction. Whoever it is, take that 10%, set it aside, like the Bible says. It's very clear on that. Even in the New Testament, it says, take a portion, set it aside, and that's God's money. I'm asking for some more of us to get in on that. Starting in September, October, November, December was up. Our giving has been great. We believe God has called us to do something specific with it, some hires and some things like that, and we're moving forward, but asking more of us to get involved. So let me close with this. 2012 was amazing. It was good. We did great ministries. 2013 will be better. Every year it gets better. You can look through our history. Every year it gets better. This is going to be another amazing year of loving people who walk through that door, full of grace, seasoned with salt. We'll love them right where they are and be encouraging and happy that they're here. The people that are outside of Connections will continue to find creative, crazy ways to love on them and buy their lunches and wrap their presents. We'll continue to do that. We need more of us to get in the mix. Figure out what you're good at, put it on your connection card, toss it in the joy bucket out there. Jeremy will give you a call this week, or I'll give you a call this week, one of us will, and we'll figure out what you're great at. And I need a few more of us to step up and say, I believe in Connections, I'm in financially, and we can continue to do great things for God. Let's all stand together. If you're a regular here, you know how incredibly rare it is for us to go this late. So I apologize for keeping us late, but there's just a lot of stuff I believe God wanted us to hear. Next week, we're doing this again, and we're doing the 3 C's. And this is, again, foundational for Connections, who we are and what we're about. Come back, we'll tell you about creative celebration and connected community and concentrated calling. And we'll talk about our philosophy of giving, which is just a big open door to be free with what God's called you to do with your money. And so I think you'll enjoy it. And bring somebody who doesn't know God, man, because or is looking for a church, because it's a great Sunday to understand who we are. Let's pray. Father, first, collectively, as all of us in this room, we say thank you for 2012. Thank you, Lord, for the lives that were touched and for what we did. Thank you for the ministry of these people, of my friends and family here in this room. Lord, thank you for using us to further your kingdom. Lord, I pray constantly that we would represent you well. And when people see us, they don't see the stereotypical Christian that the world sees, that we're shaking a finger and that we're judgmental and self-righteous, but they see a group of people who love you. Lord, help us to continue, not only at Connections, but in our own lives, continue to love people full of grace and be seasoned with salt. Then we can know how to answer everyone. Thank you for those words, Lord. Lord, I pray this next year is even better than last year, that we'd see more people come through the doors, that we could add a service, that we could blow up. And Lord, not because we want a big church. We have no desire to sit on top of a big church, Lord, but those people matter who come through the door who don't know you. Those people matter who come down the front crying and ask you into their lives. Lord, that's what we're about. That's what we're excited about. So Lord, send your people, your lost, our direction. And Lord, give us the words to say, to love them exactly where they are, and to treat them like family, not like guests. We love you. In your name.